What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're doing the Denver Regionals 2019 Standard Meta Discussion. I'll be leading this discussion with my guests Finnegan Lynch and Peter Kika. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourself? Finn first.
Hey guys, my name is Finnegan Lynch. I run a website called CutterTap.com, and I do coaching.
Awesome. Peter?
Hey, I'm Peter. I'm from New York City. I'm going to Denver this weekend. Hoping to have some fun. New city.
Awesome. Sounds good. So this is the last standard regionals of Sun and Moon through Team Up, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, cool. I'm
not sure though.
Okay, we got a yes and two maybes. Sounds good. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I checked earlier today. And so there's been a lot of competition already with Sun and Moon and Team Up. It started with the foreign IC that Isaiah Williams won with the very consistent Zapdos Jirachi deck that was pretty streamlined. And then we had Zach Lesage win Collinsville with Cephalon, and there were also some really cool decks in Collinsville. So we do have a lot to work with. So while the meta is fairly diverse, Finnegan, what do you think the top three decks are? And just a brief explanation on why you believe they're the top.
Definitely Zapdos variants. I'm not sure which one is the best right now. Personally, I like the Buzzwole package a little bit better. But yeah, some kind of Zapdos. And then Zoroark, either the Weavile version or the Lucario version. I like the Weavile version better. And then the third spot is the one that I'm not sure about. It's obviously either Malamar, Cephalon, or Pikarom.
Mm-hmm.
I see Pikarom doing well a lot, but I just feel like it gets bodied by a lot of these Zapdos variants, and Lucario and Zoroark. So I think the third spot is Malamar, but I'm not entirely sure.
Ultra Malamar, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think there might be potential for Spell Tag Malamar, but I just haven't explored it, so I'm not sure.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I think Spell Tag is fine being its own side deck anyway. It's not really in the same archetype as Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, same question for you. The top three decks in the standard meta going into Denver, and a brief explanation on why.
So you want the top three decks based on the meta or my opinion?
Let's go with your opinion.
So, because the results are what they are, I tend to favor a heavy Lucario deck in the top three, just because it counters a lot of the stuff at the top. So most performing decks are Zoroark, Pika Zekrom, and Zapdos variants,
Mm-hmm.
and some kind of Lucario build. Any straight fighting build just deals really well versus that. So I would put one of those in the top three. But I think the strongest deck overall in terms of versatility and how it deals with other matchups, I think is a lightning box type deck that has all the options with Zapdos, Jolteon, and Pika Zekrom.
Okay, cool. So we got Lucario decks, the Pika box, and do you have a third?
Sorry?
Do you have a third deck?
Zapdos. Just a straight Zapdos.
Okay, so those are more your top picks based on looking at what everyone else thinks the top decks are. Is that a fair assessment?
Correct, yeah.
Cool. Great. So let's say, okay, so next is going to be what are going to be the three most popular decks, or what you think the three most popular decks at Denver will be. Finnegan, would they be the same as your top three as well?
Not quite. I think Pikarom would swap spots with Ultra Necrozma.
Okay.
Yeah, probably Zapdos is most popular, and then maybe Pikarom is second, and Zoroark is third. I think that's what it would be.
Okay, yeah, that definitely sounds fair. Peter?
I think they fall very close to the same decks, except the fighting variant, because no one really plays that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the top archetype is definitely going to be a lightning deck, whether it's Zapdos or Pika Zekrom. One of those is definitely going to take the most spots. And then you have the other one of those, which doesn't take the top spot.
Right,
and I think
right.
Zoroark as number three.
Okay, so let's say that a general amount of the community agrees on those being the top 3 popular. So how do we go into a meta like this? Do you take a deck that has close to 50-50 matchups against all of them, and then what is that deck? Or do you take a deck that has pretty comfortable matchups versus 2 and an unfavorable versus the 3rd? Peter.
So my strategy at Collinsville was to take a deck that 50-50'd Zapdos and then beat the living hell out of Zoroark and Pika Zekrom.
Right.
And it worked out pretty good until I saw Cephalon in top 8.
So you would be kind of on the, we'll beat all of these and then just dodge this deck?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think that particular build is that kind of what you're talking about for the Lucario deck, or is it going to be something different?
Well, I have something different in store for Denver, but it's more or less a Lucario deck.
Cool. Sounds good. I'm excited to see that on stream. Finn, same question. So do we take a deck, under your opinion, do you take a deck that has 50-50s across the board, or do you take a deck that has 2 really comfortable matchups against the big 3 and then kind of loses to the other?
Well, when you say 50-50s across the board, do you mean
we'll say across the top 3? Yeah, we'll say across
Okay.
the top 3. That's my bad.
Well, if those are your only 2 options, I personally would rather take 50-50s across the top 3, but the route that I would rather take is play a deck that beats, or at least has 50-50s against a lot of the other archetypes as well, which is why I like Zoroark, because, you know, it does fine against Malamar and a little bit negative against Cephalon. And if you look at, you know, the meta shares, I think Arcanine Labs, you know, posts the numbers from day 1 and day 2, and the top 3 decks usually aren't something like 75% of the meta. They're usually more like half to a third of the meta, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, actually. So I'm much more inclined to play a deck that's got okay matchups across the whole spectrum of different decks, whether or not they're tier 1 or tier 4.
Okay, yeah, very good point. So my next question will elaborate on that a bit. Do you want a safer deck, or do you want a deck that has more high roll? Since over the course of 9 rounds and then an additional 5 to 6, obviously someone has to get lucky here and there. Do you think it's better to have a safer deck and try to go for consistency, or do you favor a deck that has a high roll aspect and can just hit ridiculous numbers, but only sometimes?
For me?
Yes, Finn.
I definitely don't like high roll decks. I am of the opinion that even if you want to go for the win, like there's this idea that you got to play like a high roll deck like that if you want to go for a win at a big tournament, because you got to get a little bit lucky. But I don't think that's the case personally. I like to just play a very consistent deck and then maybe get lucky in terms of like skipping out on a few bad matchups, or get lucky in the sense that I don't dead draw at all. Yeah, so for me personally, I just like something consistent that almost always works.
Yeah, that's a great point you have. The luck isn't always in the cards that you draw, or if you get the combo off. Sometimes it's just what the software matches you up against.
Yeah.
Peter, so same question. What do you think is better for this meta? Do you think a high roll deck or something consistent? Do we have random stuff in this meta that you have to high roll against sometimes, or can you get by with consistent and a moderate damage output like Zoroark?
So, I mean, I'm going to have to, like, I can agree and disagree with Finn's point, because I think in terms of, like, facing bad matchups, you kind of have to get lucky. Me personally, I'm in a position where I have my invite, and I'm not really looking for points to chase, like, top 16, because I'm, like, in a weird place where I'm not going to, like, Europe or any of these special events, and I can't really compete with the people chasing 16.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, like, I'm just trying to win the regional. So my approach is I'm trying to play a deck that I think, if it makes day 2, will have a very easy path to top 8. like in Collinsville.
Yeah.
In Collinsville, day 2, I played against 4 Zoroarks and 1 Pika Zekrom, and then I ID'd into Ultra Malamar the last round to make top 8.
Okay.
So, based on what frequently makes top 8, you use Finn's approach where you play a consistent deck where the majority of the people making day 2 are going to be playing like Pika Zekrom, Zoroark, and Zapdos, because those are the most consistent decks that have best matchups against like tier 3 and 4 decks. So my approach is going to be, I'm going to play a deck that just counters them and hope I make day 2.
That's a good.
I like
that's
that
a good
actually.
approach.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. If I could say one thing, I almost always go into tournaments just with a mindset that I just want to counter the decks that I think I'm going to see in day 2 as long as the deck is consistent. So I totally agree with him on that.
Yeah, and you also have evidence to back that up since you did just that at Collinsville, except you didn't plan on running into Blacephalon top 8. So let's talk about Blacephalon a little. Peter, we'll start with you. So neither of you listed Blacephalon in your top 3 decks. Personally, I wouldn't list it in mine either, but some people do. Some people think it's very good. Tier 1 can win the tournament again. What do you think is an issue with Blacephalon, and what do you think is an advantage? So what's a pro and con? Name a pro and con that Blacephalon has.
So the pro that Blacephalon has is the matchup spread that it has. It counters, basically. So it just rolls in and beats stuff that was there to counter other stuff, but it doesn't really have great matchups against the top decks. Like, theoretically, if Zoroark is built to hit 180 again, like it was in like 2-3 months ago, it's not a very good matchup for them. And Zapdos and Pika Zekrom aren't favorable matchups for Blacephalon, but if you take into account the meta and like you hit the correct matchups, like I think Zaclosage hit, me playing Fighting, which is a horrible matchup for me. He hit a Mill deck in top 4, and then he played Zoroark in finals, who didn't have it any way to hit 180. So I think if people like start playing stuff in Zoroark to hit 180 more frequently, I just think Blacephalon gets pushed out of the meta and like can't actually just win the event again.
Yeah, I definitely predict that we'll have the 180 package in Zoroark, the Kukui's, Choice Bands, Devoured Fields, just to give you a safety net and have probably around a 50-50, maybe a few percentage points here or there versus Blacephalon. Finnegan, Blacephalon, do you have anything different to add for pros and cons?
I think the deck actually is better than a lot of people give it credit for. I think it's pretty consistent and very aggressive, which is, super strong attributes for a deck. If you can get consistent and aggressive in one deck together, that's usually a recipe for success. I definitely agree that it has some rough matchups, like the Pikarom matchup. I in particular think is really bad because they kill a 1-prize Pokemon, go down to 5 prizes, and then on the next turn take 3 prizes, skipping the Beast Ring turn entirely. So I just feel like you get destroyed by that matchup, and that's probably going to be at least the second most popular deck. So that's a huge con. But I think it does better against Zoroark than a lot of people think it does. I money matched Zaclosage, and he 3-0'd me in a best of 5. And after that, I was pretty sold on Blacephalon beating Zoroark. And
was this with the 180 package with Devoured Field, Kukui, Choice Band?
Yeah, but it wasn't super heavy into those counts. So,
okay.
For example, I want to say 4 or 5 months ago, my Zoroark build had 3 Choice, 2 Kukui, and 3 Devoured Field.
Yeah,
and then certain variants. Yeah, certain versions of it also had Macargo, which makes a huge difference. Macargo makes a huge difference against Blacephalon. I think a lot of players don't know that. But now I'm at 2 Choice, 1 Kukui, 2 Devoured, and the list I played against him also had 2 Weavile, and Weavile is very relevant for the matchup.
It is, yeah.
I mean, I can't say that I drew optimally at all, but I still think, anytime you get 3-0'd, it's okay, yeah.
It's pretty convincing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have seen players in my area playing the Macargo still, and I've actually seen it help against Blacephalon because you have the Kukui and the field, but not the band, so it gets you that third piece. So that is super relevant and a good point to bring up. So Finn, I'll ask you for the next deck. um, Ultra Malamar or Psychic Malamar, whichever variant you think you'd want to, whichever one you really want to talk about, a pro and a con it has going into this tournament.
I think a pro is that it doesn't seem to have any super negative matchups. Like when I've been playing against all of the top 5 decks, well, I guess I should say top 4. I haven't tested the mirror. There hasn't been anything where I was like, yeah, I just lose to this. Like all of them have been at least okay. So I think that's a good thing. A con is that it seems like those okay matchups aren't as much dependent on me playing well as they are how well I draw and how well my opponent draws.
Okay, yeah, those definitely hold up. I've been having a lot of people ask me, why isn't Ultra Malamar just the play? It seems really good on paper. But I've built it probably 3 times in the past month or so, and just I'll sleeve it up, play a set versus all the decks, and then I realize it's not the play because you don't always get this turn 2 Metal Energy, 3 Psychic Energy, or whatever it is you need. There's more moving parts than in Psychic Malamar, and some people just move over from Psychic Malamar and expect it to flow the same way. Peter, do you have anything else to add for Ultra Malamar?
I think what's keeping Ultra Malamar from being the best deck in the format is the issue it has with consistency, and mainly that issue is highlighted by like Zapdos matchups. Like Zapdos is able to pick it off. Like Ultra Malamar is like a weird deck because it plays, the Jirachi package, and it also plays like a bunch of other stuff. Like they wanna let loose you early. They wanna like do all this stuff, but then when their bench gets limited to those, they can't really pull off their combo. And what I've been seeing in my area is people play a Tapu Koko to Flying Flip to set up the Sky Scorching Light versus Zapdos decks.
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately it comes down to if Zapdos draws, decent. I think they just like out tempo you very hard because it's just too hard to come back.
What Finn said about it seems more on what you draw than how you play. Is that what you said about Ultra Malamar?
I mean, yeah, the consistency is a huge issue. Like, I feel like the deck is just like utterly destroyed when that stamp card comes out because that deck just can't recover from like N low and then like get hit with a knockout.
Right.
Just like the old days with N. But ultimately, I think late game it struggles to find the pieces just because there's no consistency. Like once you like attack with Ultra Malamar, it stays in the active. You like have to Guzma switch out. You just need like a lot of pieces every turn, and sometimes you struggle to find that.
Sounds good. Peter, we'll stay with you. Any Shrine decks, excuse me, any Shrine of Punishment decks that are not Zapdos or that aren't Zapdos Jirachi?
Or not Zapdos.
So it could have Zapdos in it, but it's not the Zapdos Jirachi core.
What do you mean by that? Like, do they exist or are they good?
So do either or. Do you expect to see them, and are they good?
I mean, I expect to see like no one playing like a Buzz Shrine deck, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
I mean, I guess the only deck that I would consider personally that plays, Shrine besides Zapdos would be like Gramble.
Okay.
But I don't think that's very good right now.
True.
Yeah, it's not.
True. Finn, let's go to the stall deck that Riley Hulbert placed 4th with in Collinsville. So the Burning Shadows, Vileplume, I believe the Regigigas, the big HP guys. What do you think about that? Is it not good anymore because people know about it?
Well, I don't think it's done well enough for people to be extremely concerned about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna bring up that list on my side so I can double check. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I guess he did get top 4. It just still seems like people aren't extremely concerned about it. I think the deck is pretty good. I don't like Vileplume a whole lot because you kind of rely on Steven's Resolve to get your like candy combo.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, if you're playing against Malamar, they can see that you Stevened, and then they just go let loose and knock out your active, and then you pretty much you're gonna lose from there.
Yeah, it doesn't
a lot of the
sound
time. Yeah, so I think if it's a stall deck, the better version would be without Vileplume, in my opinion. My teammate Hale, I think, has won 2 cups with Mill that does not play Vileplume, and it seems like a good call to me, actually. The one problem is that your matchups are extremely polarized, so you're going to win hard sometimes and lose hard sometimes, and personally, I don't like that, but I think that could be good for certain players. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Peter, any differing opinions on stall or mill?
I feel like that deck loses hard to Jolteon GX, and pretty much all the Lightning decks, like the Lightning box decks, play that. That's like one of those decks that just like happens to find its way into like day 2 and top 8 usually. So, I mean, that deck is definitely going to make day 2 just because like, very like low experience players don't really know how to play around it. Mill always like tends to prey on those players. So I feel like you'll see them in day 2, but I'm just not convinced it can win the tournament. So I personally would never consider it. But we might see one in top 8 if he gets lucky with the matchups.
Cool. So touching on a counter to that, actually, Jolteon GX, or just evolutions in the Lightning decks. Peter, do you think that Zapdos builds and Pikarom builds, they aren't including evolutions like Jolteon GX in as a main idea of the deck? Do you think they should have them as a tech for stall, or a tech for something else, or just not include them and not worry about the Vileplumes?
Well, in Zapdos, I don't think you really play that. It's just a liability in my opinion. But in the Lightning box decks, it's just not. It's just good in general. It's not only there for Mill. Like it gives you tons of options with the 30 snipe. You have Electro Power. His GX attack is pretty good, and I mean, overall the card is just decent because it has free retreat. Another thing that I didn't mention that gives that Vileplume stall deck problems is Aurora's GX attack. Being able to recycle all your lightning energies back just obliterates them. Like especially if you have Jolteon. If you have Jolteon and Zorora in your deck, like they just lose.
Right. Yeah, Zorora is very good against it. Finnegan, same question about evolution lines, Jolteon GX in particular. In Zapdos or Pika variants that aren't already running it, do you tech it for the stall decks?
I definitely don't think I would go out of my way to tech for that matchup in Zapdos, because you're really just concerned about beating Zoroark if you're playing Zapdos, in my opinion, because that is the one deck out of the top 5 that is really problematic for you. So any space that you might dedicate to Jolteon, I would just dedicate to fighting attackers or stuff to deal with Muck, like Substrike or something like that. And then in Pika-Rom, I personally don't like Jolteon in that deck either, but I know a lot of people play it. I just don't like it because you have a 10.4% chance of prizing either the Eevee or the Jolteon, so it's like something like 1 in 5 games you prize one of the pieces and you just can't get any use out of it. And then against Zapdos, most people make the argument that you want to play Jolteon for the Zapdos matchup, but it just doesn't make any sense to me to play a GX to help with a non-GX matchup, especially if they're playing Shrines. So yeah, I don't like Jolteon in anything, honestly. You could play a thicker count to have the prize problem be less of an issue, but then you're just dedicating too much space to something that isn't important enough, in my opinion.
Okay, cool. A lot of good thoughts. Are there any other decks in the meta that we haven't mentioned? Finn, anything that you want to bring up?
I don't think so. I mean, the only thing I was thinking was when you talked about the Shrine deck, I was thinking Buzz Shrine could do something right now because Pikarom and Zoro are very vulnerable to fighting types, obviously, and if you can just have a way to deal with Zapdos, I felt like Buzz Shrine could make a comeback or something, but I don't know. That's about it.
Okay. Peter.
Yesterday I was actually at a local tournament and I played against this Charizard deck and it destroyed me. I took 3 prizes and then he somehow just killed me. I don't know. This Charizard's too big.
Yeah, the Charizard deck is actually really threatening to a lot of the top decks.
So like the problem with that deck is that like if they don't set up early versus like a Zapdos deck, because like they have pretty favorable matchups versus like Zoroark and Pika Zekrom.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't set up versus like a Zapdos deck, they just lose. The Zapdos deck can just goose them every turn. But it's very hard for Zapdos to just kill a Charizard though. It's like,
yeah,
it's very very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. That deck's kind of scary. When you mentioned Charizard, I remember another one that I had on my list. Celebi Venusaur. It's weak to Charizard, which some association in my brain got me there. So, Peter, what do you think about Celebi Venusaur? On paper, it looks good against Zoroark and Zapdos, but I don't think it actually gets there all the time.
People say that it's good versus Zapdos, but I don't see it, honestly. Like, Zapdos can just, like, pick away all your Shaymins if you bench them.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't bench them, they'll just hit your active. Like, I feel like versus Zapdos, you have to play, like, a mill deck. And in order to get all your resources back, you need to use your GX attack. But the problem is, once you start, accumulating all the energies on them, on the Venusaur, they can just do Tapu Thunder.
Yep.
And, I don't know, a few Electro Powers and knock you out. They also play Absol to get rid of your buff pad. So, I mean, it's not unreasonable for them to KO you, especially since they're playing Zapdos Jirachi and, like, you're not doing anything every turn.
Yeah, I was kind of scared going into the matchup at Elite Cup this weekend, and then I said Tapu Thunder, and the game was over pretty much.
Yeah, they also just lose to Pikachu Zekrom. Like, they can't win.
Yeah, that matchup's very rough. Finnegan, we didn't actually go into depth on Zoroark too much. You said you liked the Zoroark Weavile version over the Zoroark Lucario version. What are your thoughts on just the straight Zoroark version with a team-up Lycanroc and the obligatory 1-1 alone knock?
I'm not a big fan of that variant, honestly. I mean, I don't even know what you would do with your extra space, because, yeah, you should have a lot of room in that list. Honestly, I don't know what people are doing with that space other than the Lycanroc line, but I don't like the team-up Lycanroc. I've tried it multiple times, and it's just been very mediocre for me. I feel like the best argument for it is the Pikarom matchup, which I haven't struggled with anyway. So I'm not a big fan of that. I feel like you want another attacker in there. But I guess consistency is nice. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like it just because it feels more consistent. You play a third Rockruff if you weren't already playing it. And then you can fit the whole 180 package for the Cephalon. You can fit the 2 Kukui, the 2 Devour, the 2 Choice Band, and not have to cut another utility supporter like Acerola. But Weavile's also a great attacker. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you need all that stuff, honestly. Weavile's a great attacker against Cephalon. I mean, it's just as good as Zoroark in terms of damage output most of the time, if not better. So that can make up for not having some of those other cards. And honestly, against anything other than Cephalon, you don't need more than 2 Choice Band. You probably don't even need more than 1 against most stuff. You rarely need more than 2 Devoured Field against anything else, and you almost never need more than 1 Kukui against anything else. So I just feel like you cover a lot more ground with Weavile in there, and you're not really getting any more consistent by putting those in. Like, you're not adding any more Pokemon search or draw cards, right? You're just adding more damage modifiers for the most part, so that doesn't actually sound that much more consistent to me.
Okay, cool. Very good suggestions if you're thinking about Zoroark for the weekend. So last thing we'll do before we wrap up with the shout-outs.
One thing
go ahead,
to add
Peter.
about Zoroark,
Mm-hmm.
I know Finn said he doesn't like team-up Lycanroc, but in Collinsville, that team-up Lycanroc is one of the most annoying things I dealt with day 2. All the Zoroark players played it for some reason. Them just discarding my energy was annoying. And any game I lost to Zoroark Lycanroc was because of that card.
Was it just because of your deck, or do you think if you had chosen to play a different deck, it would have also been annoying?
Well, I don't know. It was just annoying to me.
Okay.
Because you just try to set up 2 threats, and then like they just like discard your energy and then knock out one of them, and then it kind of puts you in a weird spot.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, I mean, I don't really know what it's good versus.
I haven't tested it myself because I've been playing the Zoroark Weavile version too. but I've heard that it's good against Pikarom and Blacephalon because you can like slow down their tempo. But I think you just beat Pikarom because you hit them for weakness, and you beat Blacephalon if you hit the 180.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, honestly, I know this sounds nuts, but I'd rather play a Nina. The supporter says get an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon if it's a basic and just put it on top of their deck. Like, I'd rather just not have to use my Rockruff on that Lycanroc so I can save it for Bloodthirsty Eyes and then use that supporter instead. I know that sounds really whack, but I was testing all these different techs in the deck because I felt like I had tested everything, but then I realized there's a lot more that I could put in, so that card actually ended up being pretty good. Anyway.
That's really cool. That's one of the hack girls, right?
I don't even know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's crazy. I thought you said Mina at first. I was like, that attaches a fairy energy.
Nah, Nina.
Nina. Awesome. Okay, so last thing before we go into our shoutouts and wrap it up, there's a lot of Zapdos variants. We got straight Zapdos Jirachi, like Isaiah won the IC with. We've got Zapdos Jirachi Jolteon, like Pedro Torres just won a special event with. There's Zapdos Ultra Beasts and Zapdos Lycanroc, which have been doing really well at North American Cups. And then there's Zapdos included in the Pika Box. Peter, what do you think the two best Zapdos variants are? And if you were going to play a Zapdos variant, which would it be?
If I were to play a Zapdos variant, it would be Zapdos Lucario.
I forgot about Zapdos Lucario.
I think the best Zapdos variant is probably the Ultra Beast one, though.
Okay, cool. Finnegan, same question about Zapdos.
Personally, if I play Zapdos, which I really might actually, I like the Buzzwole version. You can say Ultra Beast if you want, but I'd rather call it Buzzwole because I don't play Shrines and I don't play Rainbows. I play Viridian, and I play 2 Baby Buzz and 1 Buzz GX. I know that's a little bit unorthodox, but personally I like that version better because I never have to worry about energy attachments, and then I don't have to worry about my attackers being prized very much. You know, like if you play a 2-1 Lucario line or a 2-1 Lycanroc line, which seems to be the norm, you know, 10% of games you just prize your one stage 1, and then you just have 2 dead cards in your list the whole time, which is why I like playing 3 basic Pokemon because, you know, I don't have to evolve or worry about prizing really. So, yeah, I've been working on that variant a lot actually for like a month and a half, and it's been the best in my experience.
That sounds really cool. Haven't heard anything like that. Is that lists anywhere on your site that people could find it, or?
Yeah, it's I wrote. Well, I didn't write. My friend Cameron, or teammate Cameron Chenoy, wrote an article, and I, you know, edited it and worked with him on it, and so he posted a list for that. And then I'm gonna have an updated list posted probably by tomorrow. I don't know when this is gonna go up.
This video will be up April 3rd, Wednesday.
Okay, yeah, it'll probably be up by April. It might be the day after that, but yes, there's a little bit less updated list on the site right now, and then there's going to be the exact list that I have built on there as well.
Awesome,
Okay.
Awesome. And my favorite Zapdos variant is Zapdos Lycanroc, and I actually play the 2-2 Lycanroc for that purpose. And I play Viridian Forest. I tried the Ultra Beasts list that was going around, but I was whiffing energy a lot, which it's funny that you say that. And I like Zapdos Rock with the 1 Buzz a lot more because I have Viridian Forest in there. You can find it. And I'll be posting that list on Flipside Gaming either the day this video comes out or the day after, just like Finn's. Thank you guys for being on the channel. I wanted this to be a little bit of a shorter, less overbearing meta discussion since we've talked about this meta a lot and we have a new set coming very soon and some expanded tournaments. Peter and then Finn, why don't you guys say your shoutouts and then we'll close out the video.
Shout out to you for having me on this discussion video. Follow me on Twitter at Peter Joltik. Look out in the next few weeks. I'm going to be debuting on an article site.
Ooh.
I don't know how much I can say about what site it is, so I'm not going to say at the moment. But follow me on Twitter and you'll find out when that article goes up.
Very nice.
Yeah, check out cuttertap.com. Peter is not going to be on it, so don't get your hopes up for that. But I'd love to read the article. But yeah, and if you want to do coaching, you can go to the site too and go to the coaching page. Shout out to Pro Play Games and Ultra Pro, my sponsors, and rest in peace, Nipsey.
Word. So good luck to everyone going to Denver Regionals this upcoming weekend. As always, you can use code CELIO, all caps, for 10% off of your next order at flipsidegaming.com. And I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.